This short video is to give you an idea of how I teach, what the lessons look like. They're very short pieces of much longer lessons. There's one for each of the 4 sections: cross-culture, in the classroom, living in the West, and critical thinking, thinking logically. If you watch all 4, I reward you in the end with a 5th bonus one, and it shows the top 3 things that Westerners complain about Chinese. So let's start. The first one is in class. It's all about making mistakes. It's my idea about why Chinese are so afraid of making mistakes. In Chinese culture, the focus isn't on learning. The focus is on doing the right thing. And how Chinese achieve this is parents and teachers, they punish every mistake a person makes with the idea that eventually they won't be making any mistakes, therefore they're doing the right thing. Well, maybe, but that there comes at a huge cost. The cost is that the Chinese become very afraid of making mistakes, very afraid of trying something new. It ends up with that famous Chinese phrase, 多说多错, 少说少错, 没说没错. The more I say, the more mistakes I can make. The less I say, less mistakes I can make. If I don't say anything, I won't make mistakes. They also use it for to do things. 多做多错. The more I do, the more mistakes. The less I do, the less mistakes. If I don't do anything, I won't make mistakes. Well, this is quite a natural reaction to being punished for every mistake you make, but it's totally different than Western culture. This drives Westerners crazy because in the West, it's all about learning, not about doing the right thing. Of course, we want people to do the right thing, but we also want them to learn. We spend a lot of time on mistakes in the course because they're important and because Chinese attitudes towards mistakes are much different than Western attitudes. And you will not be successful in the West if you use a Chinese idea of being afraid of making any mistakes. You'll learn that the first mistake is free, that really the problem happens is when you don't learn from the first mistake. Okay, next is cross-culture, and here we look at Western ideas about asking questions. Questions are very important in all of our life. And again, Westerners look at questioning different than Chinese do. So, in the West, state your opinion. Don't be afraid of telling people what you think. Ask questions if you don't understand. Please ask questions if you don't understand. I can't see up here. So when I say to you, are there any questions? I don't know that you have questions, and that in the West, the rule is that if I say, do you have any questions? And that person or that group doesn't say, yes, I do, they're silent, it means they don't have any questions. So every time a Westerner or a professor goes, are there any questions? And you are silent and smiling, the Westerner will think that you don't have any questions. We spend a lot of time in the course on questions. You learn about how to ask a question, how to answer a question, what makes a good question, what makes a bad question, why one is bad and one is good. I think that you'll find it very useful and interesting. The next example is from Thinking Logically, and I'm going to give you some good news. Here I explain why once you start to think logically, you will never stop thinking logically. It will just build on itself. It will last you a lifetime. All of these things are based on thinking logically. The good news is that Once you start to think logically, you'll never stop. It creates a positive feedback loop. What does that mean? Well, it means that the more you use logic, the more useful it is. Well, the more useful it is, the more you use logic. Well, the more you use logic, the easier it is to use. The easier it is to use, the more you use it. The more you use it, the more useful. The more useful you use it more, easier to use, over and over and over again. Once you start thinking logically, you will never stop thinking logically because it's so damn useful. You find reasons to think logically every day in all types of situations. Learning to think logically is the most useful thing you can ever learn in a classroom. And isn't it nice to know that once you learn it, you'll never forget it? Next is an example from living in the West, and this is about Westerners don't think Chinese know how to answer yes-no questions, or we certainly don't like the way Chinese tend to answer yes-no questions. Here in this little example, I explain why I think Chinese language itself is part of the problem. So yes-no questions are quite simple. Any question that can be answered with one word, yes or no. Westerners think these are the easiest questions to answer, but Chinese have trouble answering with yes-no questions, and that, in my opinion, one of the key issues is Chinese language itself. Let me show you what I mean. Let's look at 4 common questions and how Chinese answer them and how Westerners answer them. Question number 1. 你是中国人吗? Are you Chinese? Chinese would answer, sure. Westerner would answer, yes. 你好吗? Are you okay? Are you good? Chinese would answer, 好. Westerner would answer, yes. 对吗? Which is that right? Chinese would answer, 对. Westerner would answer, yes. 你忙吗? Are you busy? Chinese would answer, 忙. Westerner would answer, yes. So 4 simple questions. Chinese answer them in 4 different ways, whereas Westerners just use one word, yes. As I say, Westerners think yes-no questions are the simplest question to answer. Now, I'm not sure that this is true. This is just what I think. But that I do know that solving the yes-no question problem is easy, and you'll learn how, but you have to do it. It's another one of these invisible mistakes that you don't know you're making, but are going to harm you. Now, finally, you've watched all 4. Here is your bonus. The top 3 things that Westerners complain about Chinese. And so here are 4 common things that Westerners say about Chinese. They say, Chinese don't tell me enough, especially mistakes or bad news. Now, we're going to be looking at mistakes in another part of this little video, and so I won't deal with that right now, but this is maybe the most common. Second, they don't tell me when they don't understand something. You talk to a Chinese group and you go, okay, are there any questions? Do you understand? And they smile. Westerners who don't know the Chinese think, oh, good, the Chinese all understand, because in the West, silence means agreement. And we look at that in another area as well. Third, Chinese don't ask enough questions. You see a theme here? Finally, Chinese don't say yes or no. They tell me a story, and from that story, I have to guess yes or no. Well, you will learn the top 10 things that Westerners say about Chinese, Chinese say about Westerners. Well, learning what Westerners say is useful because you now know what problems to fix. If you don't know a problem exists, I guarantee you will never fix it. But why is learning what Chinese think about Westerners important? Well, because it'll show you that the feelings that you have are not strange or wrong, that you are having the same feelings that many or most Chinese have. And that makes it easier for you to accept your feelings, and it makes it easier for you to make changes. So, that's about it for now. I hope that you've learned a little bit about how I teach and what the lessons look like, and that I look forward to seeing you in the class right away. Thank you very much. Greg Biskey.